And in case you might be wondering, the slides will be shared with all participants after the event. So now that we are all set, here's the overview of the program. Before the break, you will hear from Shikin from Dementia Singapore and Kelda from Care Community Services Society, CCSS for short. And during the break, we will be taking a group photo, so do be ready to switch on your cameras if you have not already done so. When we come back from the break, we will hear from Stefanie from Sport Singapore. And do note that after each speaker sharing, there will be a short Q&A. So if your questions are not answered at that segment, we will also have a general Q&A at the end from all our speakers, where we can revisit some of your questions or respond to new ones. So before we hear from our speakers, let us share some findings from the pre-event survey, which everyone here has provided your inputs to. So from the survey, we understand that 1 in 2 of our SSAs here segment your volunteers by demographics for more targeted outreach and engagement approaches. This practice indicates an awareness among SSAs that really there is no one-size-fits-all approach, and demographic groups, they have different needs, and matching volunteers to the relevant roles is key to engaging and retaining them in the organization. So specifically, these are some of the potential benefits that the sector hopes to reap from such intentional efforts. So they include optimizing volunteer recruitment efforts, redesigning volunteer roles to meet the specific volunteer needs, and also more focused assessment of volunteer impact. So we know that SSAs also see the benefits of leveraging technology, such as data management, to enhance such efforts. So we will delve more into these aspects as we go along the session. So now that you've had a glimpse of the pre-survey findings, let's hear from everyone. So I invite you to whip out your phones to scan the QR code and respond to this question using one word or a short phrase. Share with us the benefits of engaging volunteers, commonly based on demographic segmentation. Tailored experience. Easier to craft content. Indeed, when you know your beneficiary groups, you can craft content. Your volunteer groups, you can craft content to them specifically. Keep the responses coming. Personalized. Okay. Organizations, I think personalized, a very common response indeed. That caters to the individual needs as well. Role matching, good use of skill sets. Yes, different groups may have different skill sets that can add value in. Harnessing expertise. Yes, keep the responses coming. Meaningful impact. Yes, indeed, when they are engaged in their skill sets, their specialization, the impact that they make can be optimized as well. Practical constraint of scheduling, right fit to the role. Yeah, so I see many responses pertaining to skill set and right fit of role. So that will be also something that we will be looking at. So our speakers will share more later and better able to provide support. So personalized continues to be a very key area, key benefit rather. Okay, so with all your responses, in terms of what are the key benefits, we will hear more from the speakers later. You can also ask more questions. How then do they do their targeted engagement and personalized engagement, right, with the different volunteer segments? Thank you for your active participation and for sharing your thoughts. So now let's hear from our speakers. So to support our learning today, we have invited 3 speakers to share their experience and insights on unleashing the strategic value of volunteer segmentation. Speakers will share on the following topics based on their volunteer engagement experiences, predominantly with youth and seniors. So the topics are in 4 key areas. Firstly, what volunteer segmentation entails and the key benefits. Next will be volunteer segmentation and the engagement journey. Next also will be consideration of what are effective strategies that are targeted. And finally, assessing the impact of these efforts. So we invite you to ask questions in these areas as we will be developing a learning report for the sector from today's session. Each speaker will have up to 20 minutes to share their experiences and knowledge, followed by a Q&A, after which we will convene all speakers for an overall Q&A. The Q&A segments will be moderated by Ping Hui and myself, and once again, the questions will be shared in the Zoom chat. So first up, we have Ms. Shikin Ahmad. So in April 2021, she transitioned out of a 17-year career in the advertising and creative industry to the social service sector. So she now contributes to community enablement at Dementia Singapore, where she oversees volunteer management and youth outreach and leadership. With a strong focus on community engagement, Shikin works to foster connections that inspire empathy and support for a dementia-inclusive society. So having started on this journey of segmenting volunteers and engaging them differently, you will hear from Shikin how Dementia Singapore reconciles their mission with different motivations and needs of their youth and senior volunteers. You will also gain insights on useful concepts in segmentation, for instance, like what is third age, right? Strategies used, enablers, challenges, and the impact of such efforts in that journey. So hopefully, as you hear from her, it may enrich or also kickstart your journey as you start them back in your organizations. So now over to Shikin.
Thank you, Esther, for the introduction. Okay, in the next 20 minutes, I hope to do these 3 things. First, I'll take all of us traveling to 2 cities in Asia, and then I'll bring us back to Dementia Singapore, where I will introduce you to our youth and senior volunteers. So what we will uncover, as you see on the slide, through walking tours, I would like to refresh or introduce the framework of jobs to be done and how this informs our approach in managing youth and senior volunteers at Dementia Singapore. And in journeying with our youth, our senior volunteers, Esther earlier mentioned the concept of third age. So this concept, I learned it from our colleagues at Council of Third Age. And this concept has been beneficial in supporting us in redesigning or even repackaging volunteer roles for meaningful engagement for our third ages, as well as our early retiree volunteers. So let's start. We will now head to Taipei. In the next slide. So when I was there, I was in the space of journeying with at-risk youth. So naturally, a walking tour led by youths who are volunteers appealed to me. These youth guides whom you see on screen, they are an interesting mix. Some have studied overseas, some who are more experienced senior guides, and some new altogether. What everyone had in common was the why they are doing this. Why are they volunteering as ambassadors for the city? In an earlier session with our colleague Eric, he talked about the why of volunteering. So these youths, they clearly identified the why. They want to give back to their city. And walking tour with youths equates, more energy, more passion, more footwork, all of the above. We had a good time seeing Taipei through their lens, and it was inspiring how passionate they are as they speak and share about their city. So volunteering as ambassadors for youths, their why is to give back to the community. Now, if volunteering as ambassadors was a job and the youths hired this job, what do you think they want this job to do for them? While you think, let's go to Seoul in the next slide. So in this slide, you see 2 distinguished gentlemen. They were our walking tour guides. They are also volunteers. They are retirees. So one brought us to Bukchon village, and the other one walked down with us down Chong Yat Chok Street. So the one on the left, he used to be an engineer with Hyundai, and he shared that he used to travel a lot for work, and he benefited from walking tours because, when you travel for work, you don't usually have time. So he thought that when he retired, he wants to lead walking tours and give back to his country. The one with the beret, I'd actually guess he was an academic or even a writer, but he was a banker. He shared many stories and insights as we walked down the stream that I could imagine what he used to. So such lovely contrast between walking tours led by youths and walking tours led by seniors, both with the same why, to give back to their community, to their country, and both filled with passion. With seniors, of course, you have a lot more wisdom and deeper insights. So now let's refresh the question that I asked earlier. If volunteering as ambassadors was a job, what do you think this job does for youths? And what do you think this job does for seniors? The jobs to be done framework in the next slide, it complements the why of volunteering. So this jobs to be done framework helps us uncover insights beneath data such as demographics or preferences by understanding the job or the job one wants to accomplish by hiring a product or a service. Stay with me, okay? Stay with me. There are 3 dimensions of the job. The functional dimension, which is the practical reason why we use a product or a service. It focuses on solving a problem or fulfilling a need. And then there's the emotional dimension of it. The feelings that we get when we use this product or this service, how it makes us feel. Happy, excited, comforted. And then there's the social dimension of it. How the product or service influences how others see us when we use this product. So this relates to status, belonging, and our interactions with people. So understanding these help us design better solutions, or in our work, better volunteering experiences and engagement. To give an example, some of us may recall in the past, I can't remember, 10 years or so, OCBC launched this product or service, Frank by OCBC. So this was created through this framework. It was targeted at millennials then. So millennials hire banking to support their financial needs. That is the functional dimension of the job. And when banking is more than just a transaction, it becomes a pleasure. When you're able to have a cup of coffee or you have very nice aesthetic, it becomes a pleasure. That's the emotional job. And then being part of Frank influences the social status to be part of the whole aesthetic, that you're part of something cool as the social dimension of it. Now, let me illustrate with another example, this framework of jobs to be done. You see on screen, I have a picture of a cup of coffee. When you hire a cup of coffee, say you're working from home, when you hire a cup of coffee in the morning, what jobs does this cup of coffee do for you? Functional job is to wake us up. That's a functional job. Emotional job, perhaps for myself, when I work from home, I always need a cup of coffee to start off the day. So it is a comforting start to the day. That's the emotional job. And then perhaps maybe I have a family member who's also working from home and we chat over that cup of coffee. So that's the social job when I hire that cup of coffee in the morning. Now think about when I hire this cup of coffee in the afternoon when I'm catching up with friends at a cafe. So same function, caffeine to keep going. So in morning, if it's to wake me up, afternoon is to keep me going. And catching up with friends, it is an enjoyable experience. It is the emotional dimension of the job. And say my cafe hopping status is elite. I've been through all the artisanal cafes. That adds to the social dimension of the job. It becomes a conversation starter or even a status symbol. Now let's think about hiring volunteering as a job. So when volunteers hire volunteering as a job, what does it do functionally? What emotions does it bring when volunteers volunteer? And what is the social perception of volunteering? Let's have a look in the next slide. So when we hire volunteering as a job, the functional aspect of it, what volunteers hope to achieve, hope to accomplish, whether it is helping to organize an event, support a cause, support the elderly, support the dementia community, or even in the space of our youth volunteers, completing a project. The emotional aspect, the personal fulfillment and satisfaction, feeling that they've made a difference or gaining a sense of purpose. And then there's the social aspect of it. How do volunteers hope to be seen by others? Seen as community-minded, compassionate, responsible. So it is worthwhile to uncover these insights among our volunteers in order for us to create, redesign, or even repackage roles that appeal to and resonate with our volunteers. How do we do this at Dementia Singapore? Is really through deep conversations with our volunteers. Let me now bring you back to Singapore in the next slide to where I work. So Dementia Singapore, we were founded back in 1990 as Alzheimer's Disease Association. So our what we seek to do is to build a dementia inclusive society. How do we do that? Through 3 service pillars. Firstly, to advocate for the needs of people impacted by dementia. Secondly, to empower the community through capability building, sharing our knowledge and consultancy. And lastly, to deliver quality person-centered care innovations. So we have 6 volunteering programs that support our dementia care centers, our home-based clients, our outreach initiatives, events, and corporate functions. Each program offers a variety of roles, each with its own unique responsibilities. At Dementia Singapore, all volunteers need to go through mandatory training where they get to learn basic dementia knowledge, communication tips, and engagement strategies. Of course, they will also be introduced to the organization of programs and services, volunteering guidelines, and they will also be introduced to the volunteer manager who will be journeying with them. So this ensures that they are well prepared and well supported throughout their journey. So in a year, and you see in the next slide, the average number of volunteers in a financial year is about 1,000. So out of this 1,000, 35% are made up of youth volunteers, 7% individual volunteers, and 58% corporate volunteers. So for this sharing, I will focus on our youth and individual volunteers. So our youth volunteers, about 20% are active. So about 70 volunteers volunteer at least 4 times at our care centers. Youth volunteers typically support at our care centers. And in this 70, there are some who continue beyond their VIA or service learning projects. So we see there's this growing opportunity to deepen their engagement. And we also believe that engaging youth early increases the chances of them staying involved at different life stages. And then in our individual volunteers pool, individual volunteers, they support across various programs and various roles. About 40% of them, which is 39, they are highly active. As of December last year, our individual volunteers have contributed about 1,600 volunteering hours. And within this pool, we have an increasing number of early retirees or third agers. So like I said, third age is a concept I learned from our colleagues at Council of Third Age. I will delve a little bit into that later. So our key focus here is finding effective ways to engage third agers as well as early retirees in meaningful volunteer roles. Because their life experiences offer valuable perspectives, enriching volunteer contributions as well as community impact. So for our pool of active youth volunteers, we thought of ways to retain them, and this led us to develop a youth leadership trajectory in 2024. So in the next slide, you will see on screen one of our pioneer youth community leader. So we elevated regular volunteers into leadership role to guide and inspire their peers, providing them opportunities to develop their leadership skills through mentorship as well as hands-on experience. Terence, whom you see on screen, he is our first youth community leader. His role saw him motivating, encouraging and guiding fellow youth volunteers. He stepped up to co-facilitate volunteering sessions for youths with the volunteer manager who's journeying with youth volunteers, my colleague Nathaniel. So Terence's experience as our first youth community leader inspired the creation of a structured youth leadership program. His journey with us highlighted the value of a youth leadership program that provides opportunities for young individuals to take on leadership roles, engage in hands-on experience with the dementia community, and also contribute towards our vision of building a dementia-inclusive society. So, end of this month, we are launching our Youth Advocate Program. So if you see in the next slide. So in developing this program, we related back, complementary to Terence's experience, we also related back to the Jobs to be Done framework. What jobs will this Youth Advocate Program do for the youths who are seeking to grow as leaders? So, and we uncovered a few jobs identified by the youth applicants themselves. So contributing to meaningful cause, developing leadership skills, and building real-world experience. So let me outline the program. It is a 1-year structured program where shortlisted youths, they get to deepen their understanding of dementia, develop skills for intergenerational engagement through training workshops, also cultivating empathy through volunteering, and nurture their leadership capabilities. The program will culminate in a project showcase where these youth advocates will present their creative dementia advocacy projects to raise awareness, especially among their peers. So while this program serves the aspiration of youth seeking to grow as leader, it addresses the community's need for greater awareness, dementia awareness amongst youth through youth-driven support. These youth advocates, they will be able to animate dementia awareness sessions among their peers and connections, decentralizing this effort for Dementia Singapore and contributing to the greater dementia community. So we started recruiting, as the previous slide. So we started recruiting late November, and this recruitment closed in mid-February with about 60 applicants from our pool of existing youth volunteers as well as externally. And 40 candidates were interviewed, And the final selected ones, they should be receiving their invites to the launch as I speak. Terence, our first youth community leader, he lent us his support throughout by volunteering to engage and motivate candidates during the interview session, and also sharing his insights to shaping the program. We are also exploring redesigning and repackaging roles to retain our active youth volunteers. In the next slide, we want to encourage our youth volunteers to support beyond our care centers. Right now, youth volunteers, they primarily support in facilitating activities and befriending at our care centers. So I think a couple of weeks ago, NCSS had this series of sandbox workshop. So NET went for the role redesign workshop. So we are exploring redesigning our home befriender role to enable our youth volunteers to support. In all honesty, this is a tough role to create, which we did back in 2021, and it will be an interesting role to redesign together youths to support this role. We are also exploring roles packaging, where we create or assign roles that meet the goals and interests of the youth volunteers, and at the same time, it also supports our organizational as well as community needs. So Isabel, Tingwei, and Kaylee, you see Tingwei and Kaylee in the picture below. They volunteered with us as part of their field attachment program from November till end January. So volunteer manager Nat assigned them different roles, from supporting at care centers to helping the VM team plan volunteer engagement activities. So here they are at our annual volunteer appreciation mixer. So commitment and ongoing support of these youth volunteers can really help to drive the long-term success of our programs and initiatives. And it provides an opportunity for sustained engagement in dementia-related and community activities. So these are the approaches that we are experimenting and we are planning to take with our youth volunteers. So we are encouraged, as we see in the next slide. We're encouraged by the possibility of co-creation in shaping our youth advocate program with our current youth community leader. With role redesign of home befriending, as much as I personally feel is going to be interesting, we are driven by the possibility of increased service delivery and also the facilitation of intergenerational and reverse mentoring relationships between our experienced volunteers and our youth volunteers. We identified two key challenges, of course, with youths, their scheduling conflicts and commitments, as well as on our part, balancing guidance and autonomy. Okay, now I want to highlight our third agers and early retirees within our pool of active individual volunteers in the next slide. So third age, it is a sociological and cultural framework by sociologist Peter Leslet. You may like to look him up, that describes life after retirement. So what it does is it challenges the traditional view of aging, emphasizing ongoing engagement and vitality in later years. So there is a high number of third agers and early retirees amongst our active and regular volunteers. And we wanted to explore a way to engage and retain them. Violet, whom you see on screen, is one such volunteer. She has been with us since 2022. She started off at one of our care centers and now supports as the program admin. So our senior volunteers, you see in the next slide, they are always receptive and open to supporting. Here you see Yong-Seng and KK. Yong-Seng is a gentleman in black. So he's always there when we need event support and outreach support. So most recently, he explored the client-facing role as well. KK, he's my dedicated training support. This virtual reality training that I conduct, without him, the Oculus sets will not be set up correctly. And if trainees need help, he's the most effective person. So these gentlemen are just two of our dedicated senior volunteers that we have. What we do to retain and engage these senior volunteers is to tailor their volunteering assignments in relation to the concept of third age, as well as the jobs that our volunteers seek to fulfill through volunteering, applying their experiences and expertise to meaningful tasks, staying active and engaged, and contributing to the community. A combination of roles allow our senior volunteers to do all this, supporting them in achieving their goal of meaningful engagement and involvement. So we tried this approach over the past year. See in the next slide. So we have seen an enhancement to volunteer engagement and retention. If you look at if I can zoom in at the success indicator, so year on year, March to December, about 800 volunteering hours. With this approach, where we tailor the volunteer roles, create a customized experience for our senior volunteers, it has increased by 87.5%. This year, it's about 1,500 volunteer hours. The enabler of this is really to, when we curate the roles, is the creation of multi-hyphenate volunteer roles that foster volunteer retention. And for the organization as well, you're able to tap on these volunteers for more support. The challenge, of course, in balancing the expectations of third agers who are seeking purpose-driven engagement with our operational needs. And the impact of which we see is really stronger volunteer connection and alignment with our mission, as well as increased volunteer engagement. So to summarize, in the last slide, we talked about the framework of jobs to be done. There is the why of volunteering and understanding or uncovering insights through this framework. It helps us design better solutions. The concept of third age, the period after retirement, freedom to explore new interests, contribute to the community, and focusing on personal growth as well as well-being. And when this, at Dementia Singapore, when we factor this in, it supports us in designing meaningful experiences where we align roles with jobs to be done and life stage motivations. It helps us to enhance engagement and boost retention through all these tailored roles and designing meaningful experiences that meet the volunteers' deeper aspirations beneath the why. Okay, so that's all I have. I hope that has been beneficial.
Yes, so thank you, Shikin, for your insightful sharing on how Dementia Singapore actually designs meaningful roles. Yeah, for youth, for seniors, which now you call them third ages, right? And also, I hear that you've aligned the roles, right, of with the goals of volunteering. Yeah, using the jobs to be done framework, where maybe specific jobs for youth will be different for those that are for seniors. So based on the pre-survey, I understand that our participants here, many of them are not selecting their volunteers yet for targeted engagement. So, but they also anticipate the benefits, right, of using targeted strategies. Earlier in Slido, we saw targeted, tailored were some of the keywords that came about. Yeah, so strategies could be like volunteer role redesign, which you shared extensively about, and also about recruitment. So yes, here's my first question to you on volunteer role redesign. What would be your learnings in terms of balancing between organization needs and volunteer expectations? Perhaps you could share in the context of engaging youths, such as the community leaders or youth advocates, because I understand that it's a rather new initiative that Dementia Singapore is rolling out.
Okay, to share openly, these youth advocates, when we are in the process of launching the program, we have a lot of interest internally. Our different colleagues from different departments wanting to tap on these youth advocates. Can they support this? Can they co-lead this program with us? So it is a happy problem, but there's the anticipation of, we can tap on these youth advocates, but also to manage expectations, to balance the expectations such that, we are in the space where we are training these youth advocates, and they will be ready, hopefully, within 1 year to support our organizational needs. Yeah, and also with the youth themselves, to hear from them really deeply what do they hope to achieve through this leadership program, as much as we want them to support us, but we also want to meet them halfway to see where we can elevate their aspirations.
Thanks, Shikin, for sharing. Meanwhile, as I'm asking you questions, in fact, the audience as well, you have to scan the QR code and to ask your questions to Shikin with regards to what she has shared so far. Okay, thank you for sharing. I see that someone has asked about the jobs to be done. Would that be similar to a JD for the volunteer? And yes, can we also understand better about the multi-hyphenated roles, which I think you mentioned for seniors? What are some challenges to that?
Okay, sure. I think work to be done is more for JD lah. For the volunteers, what do we need them to do to support us? But jobs to be done, it really is when a volunteer hires volunteering as a job, what does it do for them at a deeper level, beneath their why? So there's the functional aspect of the job, which is really about giving what they hope to achieve. And then there's the emotional aspect, and then there's the social aspect. So it's really understanding deeper than the why. Work to be done, it is correct, it is in the JD, what we need the volunteer to support us with. Also understanding the multi-hyphenate roles, there are any challenges to that. So multi-hyphenate roles, we really see in the ages and early retirees, where we try to tailor, they may help us, they may support us at the care center. And then perhaps we feel that, hey, with your experience, it'll be valuable to support us in becoming our ambassador and outreach. trying to coach them to share with them that, hey, with your experience, this is what you can do. Some volunteers are receptive to it. Some third agers, they may not, they may want to just give back, but they do not really want to be elevated. Yeah, so that is something that we reconcile with as well, to meet them where they are at instead of pushing our agenda on them. So those are the challenges with our third agers.
Thanks for sharing with regards to third agers. Maybe in terms of going back to the origin of even segmenting volunteers, right? Whether it's third age or youth, right? So in terms of identifying the target segments, how did all these roles that you came about, that were designed, how did they come about? Was it more to a need, due to a need that you were addressing, or was there other reasons that they actually came about?
Okay. How did volunteer roles or volunteers come about? Oh, so it is really when we redesign roles, it is to meet the organizational need. If I may use home refinding as an example, when we created that role back in 2021, it is to address the need of our home-based clients. Yeah, so it really is, as that was a pilot in 2021. Right now, we do have a lot more demand for that, and we see the value in redesigning this role to allow our youth volunteers to support. So if we need to answer the question, it is to mostly it's to meet organizational needs. So there are roles that volunteers need to support our programs and our services, and where we see primarily it is served by our senior volunteers, we are trying to open up that dimension where other segments of volunteers can support.
Thanks for sharing that. It's really to address an organization need as well. So in that sense, then how do you actually then assess the impact in relation to that need that is addressing?
So of course, firstly, the impact, it is the service delivery, right? How extensive it is, and in understanding and in identifying or assessing that, there also needs to be the deeper work about the role itself that we redesign. Yeah. How is it that we are only reaching a certain number of clients that we serve? How can we expand this? So in assessing the impact, there are two things to look at. Number one is the service delivery, the number of clients that we serve. And then secondly, also the effectiveness of the role from the perspective of organization as well as from the perspective of the volunteers.
So there are areas of impact that you need to address. So maybe just another question adding on to that, right? Because definitely with tailored efforts and also assessing impact, you might also need the support definitely of stakeholders internally, right? So how do you get buy-in internally to to actually put in all these efforts to roll out the strategies and to assess the impact?
Okay. On this note, I'm grateful that Dementia Singapore internally, even management or even our board members, they are very highly supportive. Just the basic segmentation of youth volunteers, individual volunteers, and corporate volunteers. I feel that the organization has seen the value of it and having a dedicated volunteer manager journeying with each segment. So in answer to your question, I personally haven't had encounter any challenges in pushing for strategies and also sharing recommendations.
Okay. So I see there's some more questions. Maybe just a last question from the audience with regards to in terms of, let's say, for senior volunteers, right? That's now you're talking about getting them to be on board. And there's challenges also in meeting their timings. And so how then do you actually ensure that their needs are met in terms of maybe a flexible timing and also in terms of the commitment that you actually set for them that is reasonable?
Yeah. So this is identified at the earlier phase. At the earlier phase when we are sharing this role with the potential senior volunteer to say that, okay, this is the commitment that's needed from you, or whether it is okay to see whether they can meet halfway or they can commit to that scheduling. Yeah. And then I also see there is a question about like reimbursement. So for volunteers coming to us, right, they are covered, they are protected rather on certain areas. So there's volunteer insurance and then certain needs. Like sometimes when the volunteer hours stretches over a period of time, there's definitely a minimal reimbursement.
Okay, thanks so much for sharing. I think yeah, that's been very helpful for us to understand how you overcome the challenges, even as you are tailoring efforts, right, for the volunteers as well. So yes, I think the audience may have more questions along the way, and we can reserve that also for the overall Q&A. And thank you, Shikin, for sharing. Now over to King Hui for the next segment.
Yeah, thanks, Shikin, for your insightful sharing, and thanks, Esther. So next up we have Ms. Kelda Chua. Right, prior to joining the social service sector, Kelda was an educator at an Institute of Higher Learning, right, where she specialized in youth development and spearheaded various impactful service learning projects. Currently, she is a volunteer manager at Care Community Services Society, CCSS for short, and Kelda equips volunteers, especially students, through carefully designed service learning programs and connecting them with meaningful opportunities. She ensures a holistic volunteer experience while making a positive impact on beneficiaries. Right. CCSS has also similarly started on the journey of segmenting volunteers and engaging them differently. You will hear from Kelda how CCSS reconciles their mission with the different motivations and needs of their youth and senior volunteers. You will also gain insights on the strategies used, resources in the pipeline, the enablers, challenges, and impact of such efforts. Now over to you, Kelda.
Thank you, Keng Hui. Hi, everybody. I'm Kelda, and I'm the volunteer manager of CCSS. So just want to thank NCSS and MPAC for having me to share about volunteer management strategies at CCSS. So next, CCSS is really our mission is that we are called to serve the community and to influence and equip individuals really for an empowered living. You know, there's a saying where it goes, when we feed a man a fish, right, we help him live for a day. But what we really want to do at CCSS is to teach the man how to fish for him to live a lifetime. Next, this is a snapshot of what we will dive into today. Next. So here's an overview of our volunteer groups, the age groups. Next slide, please. And you can see that there are two largest age group that you can see in this pie chart, right? The 15 to 24, the young people, right? And then, of course, the other end of the spectrum, the pre-seniors as well as the seniors, ranging about 28% in total. Next slide. We also see a diverse range of occupations. Someone can't see the slides. Oh, okay. I can, so I'll continue. So there's also a diverse range of occupations that ranges in our volunteers, whether it's students, you know, or the retirees. Yeah. So next slide. So at CCSS, the volunteer management framework is broken down into 4 R's, right? We look at recruitment, where it's also where we leverage on technology, which we want to thank NCSS, you know, for the VMS that we have. And this really helps us in maintaining the large database of volunteers. For us to get those data that you saw earlier, it's like that, it's a snap of a finger. And also, you know, how we are using technology to enhance the whole volunteer management process at CCSS. CCSS is also looking to enhance our VMS. We are in the process of it, and it will help us in really the onboarding of the volunteers, as well as the retention efforts in the near future. We look at roles, the second R, the third and the fourth is retention and recognition. So how does it impact in specific the senior volunteers at CCSS as well as our youth volunteers? Let's find out. Next slide, please. So first we'll talk about senior volunteers. So let me pause here. Let me ask you a question, right? What comes to mind when you hear the words senior volunteers? Okay, and in CCSS, we really look at our senior volunteers in the same landscape and framework as the slide was showing just now as well. So we have tailored our volunteer management framework to suit the seniors in the 4 R's. Next slide, please. Where firstly, recruitment is looking at the assessment, the suitability of the seniors in the role of the area that they want to function in, right? We want to align the volunteer roles to suit the interest of the volunteers as well. Okay, the second R, roles, we want to tailor the opportunities really to meet the strengths and again, the interest of the volunteers, and to understand the physical limitations of our seniors. We look at empowering our seniors. We look at also training and development to upskill them, upgrade, you know, their current skill sets to go further. And of course, just like all our volunteers, we want to appreciate their time, their talents, and their treasures that they have given to us. Next slide. So meet Uncle Stephen. So cute, right? Uncle Stephen is a beacon of unwavering dedication. He has been around with us for the last 15 years at our Active Aging Center. Uncle Stephen always stands at the main entrance of the center, and every time when I come, he's like, "You are here again," and he just greets you with that warm, fuzzy smile that he has. And he's a familiar face to a lot of us at CCSS, and Uncle Stephen is one that is well-liked and very cheerful and really brightens up the Active Aging Center. Uncle Stephen is one senior volunteer that gives of his time so meaningfully, right? He lends a helping hand setting up for exercises, or even, just clearing the space after an event, or helping in art and craft, squeezing paint, washing paint brushes, or even helping to call out numbers in different languages when they are playing bingo in the center. These small actions really adds up. And really, we see the interest of Uncle Stephen wanting to give back. More recently, Uncle Stephen has also stepped up to becoming a buddy. So we have asked him to don on the CCSS corporate t-shirt, volunteer t-shirt, right? And then join us as a chaperone for our outings. Yeah, so when you see the next slide, this is Jenny, Jenny's testimony of Uncle Stephen, and even other volunteers that she really mingles with, and how the AAC has also tailored these opportunities to suit the interest of not just Uncle Stephen, but so many others, really to ensure that our volunteers are empowered, well taken care of, and we do care about their physical needs as well. Next slide. For sure, right, there are no one-size-fits-all solution. There's no 10,000 Uncle Stevens that we have at the AAC. And we want to encourage seniors to volunteer. Right. So the question that we want to ask then is, how can we educate, our volunteers, our seniors, to then join us to change the analogy of helping to volunteering? And then how can we then redesign roles as the organization, scope out roles that can help and be aligned to the seniors' capabilities? At the same time, next slide, if you see, we also have success cases, just like Uncle Stephen. Next slide. So we then have the opportunity to partner with SG Care's office and MPAC to develop a senior volunteerism playbook. This playbook really aims to provide a diverse range of volunteering opportunities for the AACs that we have and we are going to partner with. And these opportunities are tailored to the interests and the abilities of our senior volunteers. So there are 3 pathways that I will share with you today. The first one, next slide. The first one is like us playing any game that requires you to level up from 1 to 10, okay? So really you start as a regular volunteer, you move on to the specialist pathway, and then after that, you achieve the boss mode of leader's pathway. Next slide is the second one. It's kind of like us at work. Okay, I'm kidding. Okay, it's basically, when your boss asks you to do more, but you say you don't want. Yeah, so that is actually what the second pathway looks like. But on the other hand of the second pathway, it could also be because the senior's physical abilities may not be suited for an upgrade. So this is where we tailor and we adjust accordingly. The third pathway is like our school system, our gifted program, right? Next slide, yes. So next, sorry, back, yes, okay. So this is like a true train kind of pathway where we identify seniors or senior volunteers that are ready to step in to more responsibility. So they start as a regular volunteer and then the arrow just flies, boom, and then they become a leader volunteer, a volunteer leader. Next slide. So with these pathways, I want to share with you about Uncle Stanley. Uncle Stanley is another ball of sunshine. So all the uncles at CCSS all are sunshines. Yeah. So Uncle Stanley started with us in the AAC, I think about 2 years ago, sometime in March 2023. And he was so enthusiastic in participating in our activities that all our eyes of the staff at the AAC were fixed on him to do outreach, because we wanted to gather more seniors to come to the center. So we tapped on his shoulder and we said, hey, Uncle Stanley, can you, then come and join us to be an outreach leader? And of course, he said yes. So using his experience, sharing his personal experiences at the AAC as well, he has inspired countless of seniors to join our active aging program. He's like #1 recruiter for our members at the AAC. As Uncle Stanley confidence grew, on the next slide, you will see Thomas, our program executive staff, his testimony and his vision, right, for Uncle Stanley, really to build Uncle Stanley up into becoming an outreach leader. And by empowering him to guide other volunteers, right, we hope that we can amplify Uncle Stanley's positive influence and create this ripple effect of engagement within our community. Next slide, please. So do you remember when I asked you right at the start of the seniors portion, right? What came to mind when you think about senior volunteers? Was it slow? Can they even learn new things? Was it that they are weak? Or is it actually stubborn? On our end at CCSS, we really see that every senior has a gift, something that they can bring to the table, and they are never too old they're never too old to learn or to give. There's a Chinese saying, I'm trying to not butcher this, Lao Yo Suo Wei, right? It's an idiom that perfectly captures the essence of fulfilling life, reminding us that there is no barrier to age, that age is really just a number. And at CCSS, this is how we view our seniors, our senior volunteers, individuals who come with a big wealth of experience, seniors that you can draw so much inspiration and learning from, and the life that they bring to our community. So from the young, let's now move on to the younger, right? Our youth. Next slide, please. And the following slide. So recruiting youth volunteers and strengthening partnership with schools is a key initiative and one very main strategy in expanding our youth participation in volunteering. So how does CCSS leverage on such partnerships, right? Let me take you through an example with Paya Lebar Methodist Girls Secondary. During our first year of partnership with PLMGSS, we thought that the best way was to vomit out opportunities, and share opportunities from the senior sector to these 15-year-olds. Okay, truth to be told, none of our list of senior opportunities actually interest them. And little did we know, our 2 children opportunities was bursting and it was oversubscribed. So learning from our lesson, we really looked into how we can then align the opportunities to the group's interests, and then to scope the opportunities that we can share with the youths. Right. Additionally, we looked at how we can redesign volunteering roles when we work with youth groups or youth volunteers, and to really empower them as well. Not all youths will be of a leader quality, but what really defines one from the other, and then how can we then leverage on that, and how can we mentor these youths through the new redesigned volunteer role. We also introduced this term called volunteering. So we also introduced this term volunteering, and many young people like you and I, they juggle school, they juggle part-time work, they juggle boyfriend-girlfriend issues, and different social commitments. And volunteering can really help in creating a longer impact to the community, but having that responsibility to be set on that individual, but within a team. For example, at Paya Lebar Methodist Girls, what we did is that we scheduled a team to come on alternate days, and then another team to come on alternate days, but together they actually impacted 3 to 6 months with our children program. And then at the end of the 6 months, another group came in to wrap it all up with a holiday program. So this is how we try to get more involved, right? And to also fit into their schedules and to support our operations and our program. The last one is on training and development, which I will actually share more after this. Next slide, please. So as shared earlier, right, or when we worked with the schools, there were a lot of challenges. A lot of the school groups come with very short-term volunteering, or maybe the teacher emails you and say, hey, I have a group of volunteers and they need to do their project in 2 weeks' time. How many of them? 80 of them. Then all my colleagues will look at each other and go, huh? Right? So these are some challenges that we have. And really, we do see the trend that time is really one constraint that the youth volunteers have. But again, with all challenges, we will see the successes on the next slide. We were able to develop leaders through working with the schools, working with youth groups, right? And we also saw that there was increased proactivity. Youths were coming forward because it aligned with their interest. And then whatever that they learn in the classroom can be brought to the program that they are running or the project that they are engaging in. Next slide. So let's take a look at our training and development portion. Next. We run a few signature programs at CCSS. Just for today, I'm going to share about the empathy training and the iPad framework. All our training next is hands-on, experiential, scaffolding on what students may already know, and to facilitate an active learning posture. Next slide. Yeah. So for our empathy program, we have created different personas for students to role play on. For example, a senior profile or a person with disability, right? To help them understand the landscape that they're volunteering in better. We also modularize our training. So you can see the second image with Zhonghua Primary School, where the teacher actually said, okay, our students are actually only going to impact the seniors. Can you then only extract out, certain parts that will also suit the age group, P6, right? And then to make it fun, because it's post-PSLE, they're not going to sit down and listen to you after the end of their examinations. We also have bite-sized training. For example, at Youth Core, we partnered the Mission X team to share about the elder care sector. So besides sharing the domains of the Active Aging Center, the ABCs and 2S, we get them to solve very real challenges and to get them to give us solutions on how to hack a problem. The most important part of our training is that we focus a lot on reflection, just to ensure that they understand and to deepen their knowledge of the learning experience. The next slide, please. The other training that I want to share with you guys is actually the iPad framework. So many a times, right, when the schools come to the SSAs, it becomes a chore because there is no proper process in place for students to plan and prep. Right. Some groups don't even do their needs assessment on what really needs to be done in the project. So the iPad framework is a K-12 framework that we adapted and made into a toolkit, right? And it's targeted to help teachers and our student leaders to really plan and prep the entire project properly, make the process a little bit less painful. We crafted questions and activities that can guide the students to craft up their project and to help in their learning. And we also focused a lot on reflection, which ensures that the learning of the students is met. Part of this training is the gamified portion of iPad, where we get the students to go on a mission and to take them through the different stages of iPad, the iPad framework. Next, please. Youth volunteers are really worth the investment. And as Kim Hui shared, I used to be from an IHL, and I do see the importance in youth development. Volunteering isn't just about giving of the time, but it's about discovering who they are through the process and about the connections that the youth volunteers will make, whether it's with the SSA, the beneficiaries, or even their peers. And the challenges that they overcome will make them a better person. So the impact that we leave behind as volunteer managers can be one that is very deep and one that can inspire the next generation. And at CCSS, for every volunteer that comes through our doors, just like our mission, right? We want to empower them and really unite communities and transform lives. Okay, so next slide is just a public announcement. If you would like to find out more about our senior volunteerism playbook and the training and development programs that we have, you can contact me. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Kelda. Thank you really for your insights on how CCSS, right, approaches this volunteer segmentation effort, right? And I think your sharing of, your power framework, your 3 development pathways for seniors. I remember fondly how we spent a lot of time discussing these frameworks as well last year, right? And especially also your iPad framework and training, right? Yeah. So all those are really true practice knowledge and practice experiences that you're sharing, right? So I thank you for that. For all our participants, if I can once again encourage you to scan the QR code or join us at slido.com, right, and post your questions. We will see how we can squeeze them in for this segment of Q&A with Kelda. Yeah. Maybe I'll just kickstart this segment first with a question that is focused on the recruitment and redesigning of volunteer roles for seniors, right, like Uncle Stephen and Uncle Stanley, right? Perhaps first to maybe understand a bit more, how did you go about identifying Uncle Stanley from among the crowd or Uncle Stephen from the crowd, and how do you reach out to them?
I think it was a very natural process, right? So all the active aging centers, the 2 that we have, the staff is always on ground, right? And they build that rapport and that relationship with the seniors so that, they become a friend to them as well. Yeah. So I think the skill sets and all were identified in just you always see Uncle Stephen just staying behind and then helping, or you see Uncle Stanley and you hear his conversations when he talks to his peers. Yeah, I think the staff picked all this out. And then we approach them and say, would you want to officialize, put a badge on yourself, kind of thing, and be a volunteer with us. Yeah, so a lot of the credit goes to the ops team, where they really have that connection, and also I think at the end of the day, it's also that the seniors, they themselves want to give back. I think that's also very important. If we go to a senior, let's say I go to my father, I tell him to give back, I think I talk to the wall might be a little bit faster. So people like Uncle Stanley, Uncle Stephen, I think they are a lot, they really have got the heart lah. They got the heart for the community and got the heart to give as well.
Thanks. I guess it's also credit to our friends who are on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Knowing your crowd, knowing who among the service users, for example, or in the neighborhood are willing volunteers, let's put it that way, right? And then just simply taking an extra step to reach out. Yeah. So thanks. Yeah. So maybe another quick question for me relating to Uncle Stephen, Uncle Stanley, right? It is really when you're designing a role for them, right, or for seniors who are volunteering, what were some considerations when you're designing this role so that it can fit the abilities and perhaps the characteristics of seniors?
When we were designing the roles, we thought of the lowest, we look at the roles that we have for our current volunteers, and then how can we pack it to suit the capabilities of our senior. I'm not saying that our seniors are weak or, they cannot do things of normal or other volunteers, but I think we adjusted it and to lower the barrier of entry so that we can also encourage them. It's not that difficult, you just need to try. Yeah, you try, you never try, you never know. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So I just want to move over to CCSS engagement with youth volunteers. You talked a bit about that as well. And perhaps just to share on what were some of the visible impact, for example, even in volunteer engagement experience, right? Because you conducted the iPad framework training with your student volunteers. Yeah, what was some of those impact that you saw?
I think it was to allow us to have a structure. When there's a structure in place, there are things that you can check off the list. And teachers encourage we encourage that, and teachers actually enjoy and appreciate that there are checklists. Because sometimes teachers also they come in not knowing what they can do or can help to ease the process, right? Yeah, and when we tried it out subtly with some of the schools, and we shared that there's this framework. Actually, quite a few of the schools adopted it and are interested to even use it for their VIA plans and projects moving forward. Yeah.
Thanks. Just also taking one question from our participants. It's also regarding the iPad framework training that you talked about, right? You talked about it in maybe for student groups that are coming in for a one-stop session, right? Does it and how does it apply if there are youth groups that are volunteering over a longer term? Yeah.
How the iPad
can apply. Yeah.
Okay. The iPad framework is for short term, for long term, and for very long term, right? We have a school group that came in to us for just 2 sessions. We introduced this process that they can do some needs assessment, then they and then before they execute and everything. And then we have another group which has a 6 months commitment, and every week was a different engagement, right? So it works both short term and long term. We have seen it, and it helps because then as the SSA, my colleagues on the ground receives proposals and plans that are very structured, and we know that all these opportunities also meet the needs on the ground. The last thing that we want to do is, I just need to clear my VA hours. That's why I'm here, right? I want to go down and to be purposeful and meaningful in my engagement. Yeah.
Thanks. I think I have time to squeeze in one more quick question from the participants, right? One of our participants was asking whether your student volunteers or individual youth volunteers perhaps are mainly from your partnership with schools in your locale, or do you do digital marketing to outreach to these young people?
We don't just have youth volunteers from schools. Yeah, so we do have a good pool of youth volunteers who are actually my regular pool of volunteers. Some of them have been with us for 3 years, 4 years. They started out fulfilling their VIA hours, and then somehow we touched their hearts, and they saw the work that they're doing is very meaningful. So then they continue with us. Blink your eyes a few times and they are receiving like 5-year long service award, 7 years, 8 years, that kind of thing. We tap on digital marketing for sure. We do run roadshows, as part of our recruitment plans. We do run on our social media. Sometimes we do call out for volunteers. And then, of course, other platforms that are online, like giving.sg and stuff like that. We do use all this to recruit volunteers, ad hoc and regular, both.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Kelda, for your insightful sharing and strength sharing as well. Right. So thanks everyone for your participation in this Q&A segment. All right. Yeah. Seeing most of us coming back. So thanks again for rejoining us for the after tea break session. Right. So for this session, we will have Ms. Stefanie Ang, right, division head at Nila Sports at Singapore, right, and with her extensive experience in community engagement, right, Stefanie has been instrumental in driving initiatives that promote meaningful participation in sport and physical activities across diverse age groups, including persons with disabilities, seniors, and youth. As a thought leader in volunteer management, she has played a key role in implementing strategies to strengthen and recognize volunteers' contributions within the community sports ecosystem. Stefanie will share insights on her volunteer strategies, the use of technology as an enabler to manage large groups of volunteers, and the challenges and impact of such efforts. Now over to you, Stefanie.
Thank you, Kiwi. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here this afternoon with everybody at this VM workshop to share about our work of the power of volunteer segmentation and how it's actually helped Team Nila's journey and also engaging in diverse community through sport. So we believe that sports and also volunteers are actually at the heartbeat of our movement. And just in sports, a strong team strives on understanding the strengths, the motivations, and aspirations of volunteers. Through this targeted volunteer segmentation, we have also been able to unlock greater strategic value, ensuring our more fulfilling experience for our volunteers while trying to drive meaningful social compact. So if you see this photo, it's actually really significant. Team Nila was there side by side with Team Singapore athletes, cheering our athletes to victory at the Cambodia SEA Games 2023. And with every goal that was actually scored and every challenge that was faced, we stood united, supporting our water polo team as they reclaimed their goal. So our voices echoed through the stadium, and that was really resounding as to what the water polo team captain had to say. Without our Team Nila support during this time, they would not have felt that kind of feeling being at the home ground. So with Team Nila's presence at the event itself was really significant as we celebrate, the celebration of every triumphant to their victory. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so this is my outline of my presentation today. So this will be covered in terms of some of the conversations that we would like to be able to know of how we actually segmentize our volunteer demographics and also some of our strategies. Okay, next slide. For those who are actually unaware, Team Nila is actually the Singapore's national sport volunteer movement. It brings people together from diverse backgrounds, all walks of life, who are actually passionate about using sport as a force for good. So our volunteers actually serve across various sporting events, community outreach programs, and also national initiatives, contributing an inclusive and active society. And that is definitely in the space of the sports ecosystem here. What makes Team Nila also special is not just our skill, but also our diversity. Later on, we'll be also showing our demographics. We have also youths who are also eager to develop leadership skills, seniors who bring a wealth of experience, and also families who actually volunteer together to bond through service. Recognizing this, we have also developed segmentation strategy to recruit, engage, and also sustain our volunteers in ways that resonate with their unique interests and strengths. So for Sports Singapore in Team Nila's setting, our values are very much into courage, passion, and friendship, right? Because with these core values, it will also bring across the ideas of why it is important, right? The courage is not just about overcoming obstacles, but also for our volunteers to try different things, learn different sports, and also opportunities for them to innovate. The passion to drive, how the heart to serve, as well as their enthusiasm, as well as the, interests and the passion for sport. Friendship, so it's always through friendship we forge a mutual trust amongst ourselves, because in Team Nila itself, we do see a very diverse group of volunteers who come through us, and that's where they will be able to build those friendships and build those bonds with the people that they meet. Okay, moving forward. In terms of timeline, this is across the time frame of where Team Nila is. Fun fact, Nila is actually the name that finds its roots from Sang Nila Utama, the founder of Singapore. So in terms of the foundation of building, how Team Nila actually got started, it was very much from really way before the Youth Olympic Games in 2010 when we first hosted in Singapore here. And moving forward, it was during the 2015 SEA Games and ASEAN Para Games, when we hosted the games back in 2015. That was when the Team Nila brand was started. And in fact, this year is our 10th anniversary. And if you have not seen in the media, we had just also celebrated our Team Nila 10th anniversary as part of our work that drives the sport volunteers. And of course, moving forward to now, it is now a national sport brand, Team Nila. So if you see many of our volunteers who actually don on the purple with a bit of shades of rainbow, so that's our Team Nila here. The next slide. Yeah, so at Team Nila, we actually have 5 giving platforms, giving through sport, our sporting community, active health. So for volunteers who actually join us, will also be able to have the opportunities to advocate for wellness at Active Health Labs. That's it's island-wide. In Sportcast, it's also an opportunity for volunteers who are actually very interested in supporting inclusive programs for persons who are underserved, the vulnerable groups, as well as persons with disabilities. And also at our ActiveSG Sport Centers for some of our volunteers who actually like convenience, who like accessibility that's near their home, they can also support in leading some of these sports programs and activities across 29 ActiveSG Sport Centers. And also at the academies and clubs, volunteers actually play a vital role in supporting our coaches from academies and clubs to build a character of our younger generation of youth who comes through the academies and clubs. And last but not least, of course, it is in our major sporting events, which is the biggest space, where our volunteers are contributing to the smooth operations of both local and international sporting competitions that is hosted in Singapore. So we do support our local national sports associations as well as internationally. So like for Singapore, this year is also a significant year for SG60. We have also been planning for the upcoming World Aquatics Championship as also the World Para Swimming Championships that will be hosted here in Singapore. So these are opportunities where our volunteers would be able to be part of. Okay, next slide. So we actually have exciting opportunities for volunteers here. So you can see earlier on, I talked about some of these key milestones of celebrations. So our volunteers are also involved in various ways: NDP, SAFT, the National Day Marching Contingent, Get Active that happens every year during the July-August as part of the National Day celebrations through sport. So we have ankle sites and also Pesta Sukan, where our volunteers have very diverse opportunities in sports that they can see themselves contributing to the nation and also in the global sports community. Okay, next. So as you may have also found, this was the earlier mentions that I've talked about. As part of the SG60 Singapore, we actually hosting these 2 major key events here. That's including the World Aquatics Championship. That will also include the Master Series, where we will see a lot of our local, seniors who will also be able to take part in the competition, as well as our Team Singapore athletes who also will be fronting and joining in force the World Para Swimming Championships. This will be the first in Asia that will be hosted here. So for those who are really interested, can also join us in a lifetime event to bring Singapore to an international stage. Okay, moving forward. So for some of you who might actually be interested, I mean, this is also to be kept confidential. This is our Team Nila's volunteer demographics. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. Okay, so if you see an overview, of course, at the top, first column is the first row is actually by 2025, and in fact, we have overachieved our current database of overachieving more than 50,000. We are now at 53,000 female volunteers in our base. So over the years, we have also a significant increase in terms of new volunteers who come through our door. Actively, we engage about 4,000 to 5,000 per year in our base. And if you can see the demographics here, it does represent quite closely with the national population, the Singapore's national population, across the different ages, the different citizenships, and also the racial groups, as well as the gender group. Okay, moving forward. So in terms of customized recruitment and engagement strategies, understanding our volunteers actually also allows us to create engagement opportunities to actually align their motivations. As for youth, we focus on skill building, leadership training, and also exposure to event management. As we can see from the National Giving Survey, a lot of this, volunteers who are also involved would like to be involved in events planning. So this is an opportunity that we also have realized over time that we should actually provide more of such hands-on experience for our volunteers, youth especially, to get on to fostering a spirit of giving back. Okay, next slide. So in terms of youth, starting youth early in volunteering fosters a lifelong habit of giving back. Early exposure has really helped them. So I would say that's also the case of myself, who has also been involved in the school days as a student during my time as a CIP, which is Community Involvement Program. And that was how I also got started as a volunteer. And that really resulted in me having to also continuously give back to the community. We'll move to the next slide. And for Team Nila, how we actually partner up actually with youth is definitely one of the key segments of this population is through the schools. Partnering with schools actually promote the sport volunteerism. Team Nila actually continues the partnership to encourage them to contribute to sport. So we have this program called the Serve to Lead. So this Serve to Lead programs really empower our youth to take ownership of the volunteering opportunities. So having the accessible entry points, collaborating with schools, targeting especially the sports CCAs as such, to look at those who already have a sort of interest for respective sports, and then we try to match them according, to the sports that they typically would like to. So that's how we actually do some of these efforts. Personal growth and skill development. We also make arrangements by going to the school, design a training program that is really catered for school as part of a form of growth to learn a bit more about sport volunteerism. And in terms of service learning, as we all hear from Kelda as well, quite similarly, VIA is always one of the key platforms for schools to get started. Then over time, for schools or students who are actually interested, who wants to stay long in the course, they will continue to serve in this. So by nurturing this spirit early, we also hope to shape future leaders who actually serve with heart and purpose. Right, next. So in moving on to the senior segments, we also provide roles that actually encourage social connection and also lifelong learning. ActiveSG, which is actually an intergen program that pairs seniors with youth volunteers, create a rich and environment for mentorship and also shared experiences between our seniors and youth. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. So we have this pathway, or not say pathway, but Team Nila Silver Champion. It is really shining the light on our seniors, right? Because they have the time and the capacity to give after retirement. For those who are at least over 60 years old. So this is also one of the key programs that we have, or a scheme that we have in Team Nila. I think you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so in fact, building a home where senior volunteers can also contribute back. We think that significantly a lot of seniors, who really have the time, will be actually in this category of seniors. So back then, just before the pandemic, and when the Merdeka and also Pioneer Generation packages was being rolled out, we also proposed this to help our seniors who are actually over the age of 60 to also defray their costs. It's a small stipend of a reimbursement to defray their transport and also meal costs when they volunteer minimally with us for 20 hours in a month. So this is as such for us how we in a way compensate to our seniors who may not be actually working, but at least to help them in some of this costs. But of course, at our volunteering opportunities, we do still actually provide meals for them in most of the opportunities that we cater for this group. Okay, so moving next slide. So David is actually a living example who has experienced the profound joy of making a difference in the lives of people around him. So David, who is now 60, is actually a running enthusiast, has snuck up the prestigious Team Nila's Gold Award for several years now. So he has been one of the top, last year in wiping about 890 hours. And that's really quite significant if you look at the whole entire time that they have contributed. So he was also part of the NDP, and that was how he also met her partner in the NDP marching contingent, which was really interesting side of the story. Okay, can we move on to the next slide? So golden years, golden opportunities. We think that a lot of our seniors, almost 1/3 of our awardees actually come from the seniors categories, and this is in a way our commitment, for our seniors to actually contribute back, at the national part of the service. Okay. Can move on to the next one. ActiveX. ActiveX is the earlier I've also mentioned is a program that brings together primary and secondary schools to bond with seniors through sport. So this in a way to bridge up generations through volunteer. And of course, feedback has also shared that it really helps our seniors to feel younger when they are also with our youth. Okay, next one. This is also another case study, Team Beats. So Team Beats, is an initiative where it allows our volunteers to contribute their energy and creativity, through drumming, cheering for our Team Singapore athletes, and also for the love of music and movement that they perform at these major sporting events, rallying the crowd and also elevating the spectator experience. So by aligning the engagement opportunities with different volunteer personas, we have actually students from the IHLs who come together and they play together with our seniors, which also ensures a certain level of sustained commitment and also personal fulfillment. So that really enhances retention and impact. So this is really interesting because our volunteers here, we have one senior who is actually with medical condition, but she really enjoys her time being with Team Beats because of the atmosphere that it brings for this group. Okay, moving forward. From fans to leaders, so this is also another pathway that our Team also brings in building and developing leaders. Okay, go to the next slide. So this is our Team Volunteer Leadership Program. So it aims to really build a value creation and also develop pathways for our volunteers. Okay, moving on to the challenges. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, while segmentation has been powerful, it comes with also challenges now. As you might have also seen or known, right? Because in a major sporting events, many of our volunteers here do also come and go. There's also a decreased volunteer activity due to time constraints and personal challenges. I think that's also across, the challenges that volunteer managers all faces. Many volunteers start strong, but may actually lose momentum. So to already address this, we also created progressions such as the leadership roles in the marching contingent, and also mentorship opportunities in various of our leadership programs. Difficulty in also securing preferred volunteer opportunities due to the large pool of volunteers. With a large volunteer base, some may actually struggle to find volunteer roles that match their preference. This is also stems from the fact that because our events are also designed in such a way that we work with event organizers, with the fact of what the event organizers would also need. So this is also one of the part that we're also refining, more opportunities to matching volunteers to ensure that we also have a fair allocation and increased transparency. The third one is prominence of ad hoc volunteering over regular volunteering. That is why we have different giving platforms beyond the sporting ecosystem. So this is where sport cares or the active health lab programs are also important to enhance this part of the pathway. But on the other hand, we also work with some of the organizations such as social service as well, to also provide such sustained regular opportunities. Last but not least is on the data, cleaning of business data, tech challenges for seniors and limitations of system customization. So in a way, manage volunteer data effectively is crucial. So this is also part of improving our digital infrastructure, which actually can provide tech support for seniors. So this is also where we also work with SG Digital to help to also enhance the knowledge of our seniors to help them when they face some of these digital issues. Okay, moving forward. So these are some of the strategies that we use from developing volunteer leaders, having to engage our volunteer leaders through induction and retreats, by having them to be with us, when we actually think that they are very much important when we work through some of our strategies. We also have the capability development, town halls as such, quarterly engagements. And of course, last but not least is also recognition for our volunteers. Okay, so this part is the last, I would say the last few. Volunteer management system is very crucial. Without a volunteer management system, that would not be able to help us data crunch and also do data reporting. Okay, success indicators. These are some of those that we have. You can go to the next slide. So as in a nutshell, success indicators for Team Nila here, this is not exhaustive, but volunteer participation and engagement metrics are some of this. But beyond that, we are also looking at program effectiveness and also the reach. And as we move forward in the space of data-driven insights, we are also looking at having to work with some of the research agencies to help us measure some of these social compact. Okay. This is my last slide. So in conclusion, volunteer segmentation is not just, I think you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so volunteer segmentation is not just about categorizing people. It's also about unlocking potential. So that's also talking about skills-based volunteering. When we recognize and respond to the diverse motivations of volunteers, we can also create a more inclusive and engaged and impactful movement. So at Team Nila, our approach has always been to try to transform volunteering into a dynamic and fulfilling experience for our individuals from all walks of life. And also as we continue this journey, it is to continue to enhance engagements, to inspire more organizations to embrace volunteer segmentations as a strategy for for building stronger and more resilient communities. So with that, I'd like to thank all of you for your time. Sorry for the rush, but thank you NCSS, for inviting me to this session. Thank you.
Thanks, Stefanie. Thanks for your insightful sharing on the various programs that Team Nila uses to engage more than 53,000 volunteers, right, at this time, across the different volunteer demographics. Right? You're sharing on all these programs, for example, ActiveSG that promotes intergenerational volunteering, Team Nila Bits, a very interesting concept. Right. And with that, I really wanted to focus a little bit of our Q&A with you now in the next 5 minutes on perhaps to explore a little bit more on effective volunteer engagement strategy that you shared, right? So maybe at this point in time, I would just like to invite our participants to similarly scan the QR code, right, or go to slido.com to join us. Just a side note, we noticed that many of our participants are asking operational funding related questions today. And if you scan through our Zoom chat, right, our NCSS colleagues have actually updated some information for your reference. And if you would like to know more, you can reach out to any of our NCSS friends that are here today, right, for a separate chat as well. Yeah. So back to Stefanie, your sharing, right? You were sharing on how there are many of these engagement strategies like, the inductions and retreats, the training, the quarterly engagements, and even town hall for volunteers, right? I mean, based on our own experience within the community, sometimes we find it very difficult to encourage volunteers to come to this sessions, right? Engagement sessions that are on top of their volunteering program. How do you encourage your volunteers to attend such engagement sessions?
I think for us, of course, one of the key things that is important is that we try to design our engagement. Recently, we also have tried to redesign our engagement strategy such that when they go to, they come to the session, they will be able to get different suites of things, right? So when I say given different suites of things, meaning that they in a day itself, because their time is short, we try to pack training together with some of the information of what's coming up, to share with them so that we don't miss them. And then for those who actually want to also do volunteering, This is where we also try to, kind of pack it in such a way that they come one day, they can actually do quite a number of things. So this is actually one of the format that we thought was also in a way working for us. So we have tried to continue. We are still continuing and observing it until the time that we may need to change that. But I think we find that volunteers, because like what you mentioned, the lack of time, right, it's important to spend their time wisely. I think that's always the case for our volunteers.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, just maybe going a bit deeper into one of the engagement strategies you talk about, which was your capability building, right? I think this is also a question that I see from participants. Perhaps share a little bit more on some kinds of trainings that you design for your student volunteers, and how do you make them relevant so that they will turn up for this training?
Yeah. So for our trainings, how we packed it is we have the tier 1 and the tier 2. So tier 1 being that volunteers who are general volunteers, right? The second tier is for our volunteer leaders. So maybe I'll go with the volunteer leaders one first, right? Because for volunteer leaders, it's quite straightforward. Because we know that they have a certain set of we have a certain set of need of what we want the volunteers to do. So in a way, we pack our volunteer leaders to the kind of competency that our volunteer managers need to perform. So that is very much actually with aligned to the Skills Future framework. So in terms of soft skills, got to do with communication skills, problem solving, leadership skills. So that's on the soft skills. When you talk about technical skills, that is pertaining to our sports ecosystem, which we require them event operations, sport-specific knowledge. For example, it depends, right? And also some of the health and safety components. So we actually do certain compulsory elements of trainings. They actually go on to online e-learning contents that is more soft skills related. For face-to-face, we also run a leadership training where we talk about more problem solving. What are some of the challenges when they as volunteers, when they do deployments of our volunteers, managing conflicts. So these are some of the key things that we get our volunteer leaders, to be trained in. Psychological first aid is also another big one. CPR AED as a first base, actually that is in the level 1 content. So for moving back to general volunteers, our key is always to make sure that we look at the more generic kind of skills. So CPR AED is one of the key ones, first aid. Responding to as we move forward, right? There's a lot of these societal challenges of making sure that we are also ready in times of crisis. So these are actually skills that's applicable for everyone, even through their daily lives. So CPR AED, responding to emergencies, these are some of the key ones that we are putting in place for our general volunteers. And then on top of that is to top it up with some of these small sports technical skills. But that one is a very small segment of group if there is opportunities for us to train them, because we are also gearing for like SEA Games and ASEAN Para Games in time to come in 2029. So we again look at the different groups of the people where we may need to work with the National Sports Associations to look at the identifying what kind of roles that they want to match them, because we also have things like photographies, sports announcing, so there's a lot of this kind of skill-based opportunities that could also be potentials for growth. Yeah.
Thanks. So I think really hearing from you is really about understanding the needs and the different functional areas that you require volunteers to support, and tailoring that to and matching that perhaps to the either the youth volunteers, the young adult, or the senior volunteers, where they can you can match their ability. Thanks. Maybe just to squeeze in one last question from participants, right? You highlighted a key challenge of technology, and especially technology with engaging seniors, right? Currently, do you have any strategies that you are piloting, testing to overcome this challenge?
Yes. So in fact, I think one of the core things is that when it comes to volunteer management, because we are also using the Volunteerism system, right? So in a way, because this system is not directly under us, I mean, it's true MCCY. So if there's any sort of change that is also required, we will need to work through with MCCY to also enhance it. But because if we are able to identify them early, right, it will also support the rest of the other agencies who are actually on board. So we have been having very deliberate, conversations with them, doing FGDs with the tech team, from the user's experience, how that that usability of it is so important for our seniors. So what is also important, that we are also learning from it is that, before the situations gets worse, right? It's important to tackle it at the onset. So I think that is something that we have been trying to do to overcome while working with the tech team in making sure that it's going to be user friendly, senior friendly, and things like that. Yeah, because if not, every time they go in, they can't get onto the system so easily. But of course, with the other one is with SingPass, it's all securities. So without having those applications, right, it will be very tough for our seniors. So I think this is something that we also acknowledge lah. Because if we need the data, then that's also something that we need to train our seniors. So that's where I mentioned about working with SG Digital, running maybe some of these training sessions to help our seniors will also be very important.
All right. Okay. So thanks again, Stephanie. Thanks for your insightful sharing and for answering the questions both from us and from the participants today. So I think at this point, I just want to move on to our general Q&A segment and invite our three speakers back online. Yeah, I'll hand this over to Esther.
Okay, thank you, Keng Hui, and thank you, Stefanie, for generously sharing your ideas and experiences, Team Nila's perspective. So in this next segment, participants, you can submit to questions to any of our three speakers here. And alternatively, you may also direct the questions generally to all speakers. So if you are directly addressing the questions to any particular speaker, you may indicate their name as well. Otherwise, you can indicate all. So similar to our previous Q&A segments, questions will be moderated and we will also share questions that we are asking into the Zoom chat. So just a quick recap on the subtopics that we have been covering today in terms of unleashing the strategic value of volunteer segmentation. We've been looking at what it entails, what are some of the benefits to the organization, and also the journey that our speakers have been taking in terms of segmenting the volunteers and then coming up with strategies, of course, the considerations, the enablers and challenges, and finally assessing the impact of these strategies. So perhaps to begin our questions to the speakers, maybe we just want to hear, from the starting point on actually why did you embark on volunteer segmentation to begin with, since it's also quite intensive. Some of you have even used technology to help you as well. So what would be the key benefits? I'll just open it up to all the speakers. And meanwhile, I'll just encourage everyone to scan the QR code to submit your questions.
I can go first. Yeah, generally to segment the different groups of volunteers is to allow tailored experiences. So personalization, tailored experiences, those are the things that were highlighted at the start of this session. So that was the main reason why over at Dementia Singapore we embarked on that, to segment the different groups of volunteers, and also to have a dedicated person journeying with that group across the different stages, from recruitment to retention, across the volunteer management lifecycle.
Shikin, I understand as a dedicated person, maybe from the rest, how is it, being practiced in your organization, since it does require resources as well? So, yeah.
Thanks, Shikin. Thanks, Esther. I think for us at CCSS, we are also the operator of the SG Cares Volunteer Center at Geylang and Serangoon. And when we dialogue with the other SSAs, the community partners, we do see that, there's this gap where a lot of times the volunteers are just thrown into the role. Yeah, but when we segmentize and we really look at the roles and the responsibility that is tagged to whether it's a senior volunteer or youth volunteer, that allows and creates a better volunteer engagement. Yeah, so when we work with the other SSAs or even in the programs at CCSS, yeah, that increases the satisfaction for volunteerism, and then also increase the commitment that we as an organization are putting in an effort, and then hand in hand, it's a win-win situation as well.
Thanks, Kelda.
Yeah, so I think for segmentizing of the volunteers is really to better manage and to engage them, because at the end of the day, we always want to look at retention, right? So it's always important to understand their motivations and also maybe in terms of their skills and availability. So by having that, especially for those who may be of the more senior retiring, they could actually take on more bigger opportunities, or longer duration, but maybe need to be bite-sized. So having to optimize that kind of opportunity will also enhance the satisfaction of this group of different various groups who may actually want to give their time.
For sharing that. Yeah, later I understand there's also a lot of questions from the audience, on really the nuts and bolts of these roles, right? So we will delve into that later. So maybe just on the point on, like Kelda mentioned, right? You do have a dedicated staff. Now that you have segmented the volunteers and you know what are the different motivations and barriers perhaps, and you have a staff dedicated to that. Are there certain pushback, with all these, roping in of staff? Are there certain resources that you all use to make it work better for the organization?
Pushback.
Hopefully not, but yeah.
I would like to think there isn't. I feel that my colleagues, especially the program team, we do work hand in hand to really craft out the volunteer role. So for example, I think one of the areas jumping into 2025, we saw that some of our very long-term volunteers, due to life stage, right, whether is it having newborns or aging parents or even studying abroad, they had to stop volunteering regularly. So our program is actually a weekly mentoring program, right? And a lot of these volunteers, we don't want to let them go lah. Yeah, we want to hot these talents, right? So what we did was, or what I did was to have the conversation with our program team, and whether we can create a new role for these ones that we see value that they bring in. They have been with us for so long, so many years, longer than myself, right? And then we created this thing called the Relief Mentor Scheme. So we call our volunteers mentors, right? And then when we redesign it and we go Relief Mentor Scheme, then you kind of think, oh, okay, it's like a relief teacher scheme now. When you're available, you join us, or when we need, we pull you in. Yeah, and that conversation started, when we found this gap, and then we just kept talking with the program team. They saw the benefits of it at the end of the day. Maybe I nag at them too much as well, right? And that helped. Yeah, and then of course the buy-in of my peers as well. I think that also helped in allowing us to move this portion forward. Yeah, so not so much of a pushback. I think I need to just push harder than when they push back lah. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Push harder. Good to hear that. And that is also that the volunteers are forthcoming to actually rise up in the roles. Yeah. Were there any pushback then from the volunteers themselves? Because sometimes we do, the audience, they have some concerns, right? What if, like a commitment, right? Are they able to commit to the role? Yeah.
When you give them a lighter role, right? Like, you drop pass, yeah, that kind, they okay. When you want to up pass them, right? Then they will want to, they will then, hi, you sure or not? Can I do it? Yeah, that kind of thing. So a lot of conversation has to go on. A lot of times it's about understanding where they come from as well. And really we want to, at the end of the day, is to really empower them. Really going back to our mission at CCSS, not just empowering our beneficiaries, but empowering our volunteers, even staff like myself, to really go the extra mile. Yeah.
Well done. Before we move on to, the volunteer leaders and how we empower them, would anyone else want to share more also in terms of how you get a buy-in from the staff in terms of all these targeted strategies? because it requires resources as well.
Having for Dementia Singapore, having a dedicated volunteer manager journeying with that segment, it is actually beneficial in the sense that that volunteer manager is the one leading conversations with the different program as well as center managers. So it actually enhances internal stakeholder relationship as well. Yeah. So far there's not much pushback, and we can definitely see between the different segments of volunteers, right? Like how this relationship, this healthy dynamics, it has evolved. It has evolved, and also for volunteers themselves, that there are roles that we identify like baseline roles, and there are additional roles created from this relationship.
Thanks for sharing. So maybe on the point of roles, right, you have very interesting roles like the community leader, the youth advocates, right? So in terms of selecting the right volunteers for these roles, does the maturity of the volunteer matter?
Okay, for our youth advocate program, that is a step-up program. Yeah, so Terence is our first, when we were exploring a youth volunteer leader trajectory. So Terence was our first youth community leader. And then the youth advocate program is a step-up youth leadership program. So that is open to general, it is open to firstly, of course, our dedicated volunteers. There are a few of them in that batch, and then also to the general public. Yeah, so with youth volunteers, the roles itself and also the recruitment of the roles itself, it is open to our current volunteers as well as externally.
Thanks, Shikin. Maybe I also open it up to Stefanie, to Kelda, since we're on the topic of youth volunteers, right? How do you then actually determine who are the right ones to actually come to the role? Does the maturity of them matter, or are there other considerations?
In fact, I think this is also a very interesting topic, right? Because I think we're always talking about how to engage youth. And in fact, for Team Year, we are looking at the even younger groups of I mean younger kids lah. So those who are actually at the primary school and also the toddlers. So one of the things that we are also trying to explore, this will be also in our pipeline of our work, is to engage children together with their families. So as a form of exposure, I won't say in terms of volunteering per se. I mean, we have opportunities for children, who are maybe in the primary school to secondary school level as ball boys, ball girls, kind of engagements in sports. The other group that we are looking at is, maybe supporting Team Singapore, to cheer on the team, right? So these are also other opportunities. The other one is also through the CCA groups. What are some of the CCAs also interested? So that's also something that we are working as a pipeline, and wanting to hear from schools to try it out, because I don't think every segment has a one straight cut of an answer, right? Because I think that's also the same for some of the SSAs. Some may like, some may not like, some may be more towards certain causes. So I think that is really an iteration process when we actually start working with the partners. What's their want, and then from there we package the different wants and needs.
That assuming that we've already been clear on the wants and needs, we've gotten the volunteers on board, retaining them can be also a very key thing. And I see that the participants have been also asking, how do you actually recognize them, perhaps as a means of retention? Yeah, so maybe we can just hear from the speakers, what are the practice to recognize them, and any incentives that you might provide.
So maybe I can go. So on our side, we actually have a Team Year yearly awards ceremony that is also being established to recognize our volunteers. As long as they have achieved 90 hours volunteering hours, they will actually be recognized in the bronze, silver, gold. So for 90 to 179, then those who are between the 180 to 359 will be in the silver category, and then those who are actually above 360, they are actually recognized as gold awardees. Understand, of course, the fact that ours is not always the case, right? Because when we talk about impact, right, what's the impact that the person is actually contributing? So there's also additional elements and consideration that's also in the pipeline that we are considering to recognize volunteers who also go above and beyond, and that's also through the human interest stories. that we push out on our social media, through our EDMs, through at the ministry level. How do we also recognize them at the different platforms of awards, at the president, the PVPA categories and things like that. So I think those are that kind of recognition. But beyond that, I think volunteers, some who are actually more intrinsic, they are not really looking at those things, right? But I think appreciations on a daily basis after the event is always important. Of course, those who are maybe looking at more extrinsic kind, that's where I think for Team ER, we actually also started a tire that we also give to our volunteers as a form of with t-shirts with the bags and caps and sleeves and things like that. That is in protection to our volunteers lah. So I mean, for those who are really more extrinsically motivated, they will actually look at some of these things. But of course, our youth, if I hear from what the ground is also saying, is that they are also looking at opportunities where it can build their CVs. So I think that itself, like testimonials, are actually important for them. And if we can also work with schools to recognize those kind of things, I think that's always the best deal lah. Yeah.
Stefanie.
Okay, I can go next. So at CCSS, we actually in our retention realm, right? We actually look at ABC. So A is to appreciate our volunteers. So we actually do that through like a yearly volunteer appreciation day. And then of course through the programs also, the team do meet up, have like bonding sessions and stuff like that. And then we use the volunteer appreciation day to also bond our volunteers, which is what B stands for lah, to bond our volunteers. And it's really one time where all the volunteers from all programs come together. And it's a very bustling place. They sit down, have a meal, and we also invite beneficiaries to come back, whether is it to share how volunteers have impacted them, or even getting our seniors to perform for our volunteers, really like a kampong lah in that sense. And then of course to celebrate our volunteers, the lives that they have impacted through the time, talent, and treasures that they have given. Yeah. Every year when we gather all these volunteers together, right, we are always so excited to see all of them like suddenly like Chinese New Year reunion basically. Yeah. We also we are looking at other ways to retain volunteers as well. One of the ways is to kind of gamify or include like things that we can leverage on technology with. So for example, giving our volunteers badges, right, like superstar volunteer or like A-star volunteer. Okay, those are not the terms lah, but we are looking into that. And then of course also using technology. I think Stefanie mentioned something about youth volunteers wanting to increase their portfolio, right, and their CVs. So how can technology help us with that? Next time on our volunteer management system, once you click a button, basically an acknowledgement letter will be sent to your email lah. Yeah, so everything's automated. That lowers the admin process on my end, right? And
Nice.
yeah, and if technology can save us, technology should save us lah. Yeah.
If I may jump in here, right, because you talked about gamification and recognition as a means of also recognizing them, right? Maybe that might apply for youth volunteers. Does that hold the same for seniors? Would it be different?
Actually, seniors, right, they are very cute one, they will join in and they will like, 你看, I got like the badge, or something like, okay, maybe it's not a physical badge lah, but yeah, and they do enjoy such challenges. Yeah, and they will talk about it. And then with them talking about it, right, actually more and more people were like word of mouth, right? So they will hear about it and then they're like, okay, let's do it, together. And I think it also helps us in increasing the awareness, yeah, amongst the seniors, which is also something that will then help us in growing the peer volunteer pool, right? So it's a win-win situation in that sense. Yeah.
Thank Kelda. Yeah. So maybe let's hear also from Shikin if that's also happening in Dementia Singapore where you engage seniors.
Okay, over at Dementia Singapore, like what Stefanie and Kelda shared, so similarly also we have our volunteer appreciation event at the end of the year where different groups of volunteers will just come together just have a good time. Typically, it is our individual and our youth volunteers. They will come together at this volunteer appreciation mixer. But throughout the year as well, we do also organize training sessions. Training sessions where we invite volunteers to come and learn, and at the same time also engage with each other. So that's also one of our retention strategy to equip them with more knowledge that will support them in their volunteer role. At the same time, also create the opportunity for them to get to know each other. And also at Dementia Singapore, we are very consistent in sharing volunteer stories. So volunteer stories across social media channels. So we use the hashtag Dementia Singapore Volunteer as well as Youth for Dementia Singapore. So we regularly share stories of our volunteers on social media.
You talk about training as a means of retention. Yeah, does it differ between youth and seniors in terms of your
So-
approach to training?
So training sessions, it will be generic to dementia-related training. Dementia-related, so it could be the VR training that I showed in my presentation earlier, or it could be general training like a Dementia 101 deep dive. Yeah, so we open up this knowledge downloading sessions, and then we get the youths and our individual volunteers to just sign up and just show up.
Thanks, Shikin. How about from the rest? Might there be a different approach then between seniors and youth in terms of retaining them through training?
For us, right, for CCSS, the senior volunteers training are actually very focused on the activities or the areas that we want to upskill the seniors in. So for example, a few months ago, we did a mobile photography training, right? That mobile photography training would then help us in getting them as volunteers to help us take photos at the center, at our events, that kind of thing. And then more recently, because we wanted to start out a new interest group, with the ever-changing landscape of the AAC, we also needed to move towards technology in the AAC. So they actually, just last week, they had a hydroponics training. Yeah, so they are planting vegetables. Every day I receive photos of the vegetable sprouting. Then the uncle will say, this one not cai xing, this one is xiao bai cai. And then I just look and it all looks like vegetables to me lah. Yeah. Yeah, so that's for the seniors. For the youth, right, we really focus a lot on how they can use the skills and knowledge that we impart to them through the experiential training to then impact the community. Yeah, we don't want it to just be, I train you already, then you consume and don't vomit it out, right? We want them to be able to understand it, to really get hold of the concept, whether is it empathy or whether is it planning or prepping, or why is it even important to do a needs assessment? Why is it important to know the assets of the town, for example? Yeah, and then through that to then output into something. Yeah. So that's the difference. One is more for interest, to get them interested, to then help in the active aging programs. And then the other one is really about the output, giving them the knowledge and then the execution after. Yeah.
Stefanie?
Yeah, so for team, I think I would think that trainings as we also learn through the work that we do, while we actually do a needs and assessment, but I think over time there's also a lot of requests. And when this requests come in, right, then you assess accordingly, right? Because these are things that the grounds are also sensing. There is a ground sensing, right? And the trainings has to be bite-sized, because timing for, I would say, even across trainings, to get people to come in for training, especially for volunteers, regular volunteers, they don't really also come for training unless they are really interested or they are really trying to go for something that helps to boost their career, or things like that. Yeah, but if you talk about senior segments, active farming, because Team we actually have an active farming where our seniors actually, together with some of the volunteers, they do regular farming. So those are things that really interest them. And because we also just concluded some sessions of sharing with City Sprout, and that really excites them. So I think it's really going back to the needs and what really is an interest for them. yeah, even for some of our other training programs that we have, from inclusivity to communications. So having the variety of this would also definitely cast a wider net to try to, because I think there's also one question is how do we also engage dormant groups, right? In fact, that is also another way to excite this dormant group who is not uh, have not been involved very much, and then suddenly, hey, you have this, and then they may eventually come back, and that's how we kind of draw them back on that lah. Yeah.
Thanks. So I can see that there's a lot of resources invested, and sometimes it bears fruit, sometimes it doesn't, right? So how will you actually then assess the impact of all these efforts? Maybe beyond output numbers. Yeah. What other ways that the team will actually assess to justify all the efforts that are being put in?
I think impact is always one of the top questions, right? Because when we can go through program evaluation and do a lot of these things, but if you ask me, really, hand to heart, right? A lot of this evaluation, at the end of the day, is really about building the people to become better, right? And that's always the intent, right? When our volunteers become a better person, they will be able to contribute even better. They communicate better, being more digitally savvy. I think these are things that is how do you measure? Yeah, of course, is you have to put some measurements to also measure this outcomes. But for I think for Team Nila, I always go with the fact that when they are socially, physically, mentally well, we are really very happy because with them having to come back, seeing them, whether they can actually, even some of our seniors may be very aged, right? But having them to come back to be there really would also be a great move lah, because they are at least moving. So I think that to me is something that I personally would think as an important part of looking at it lah.
Thanks, Stephanie. Maybe just to add on also, as I mentioned, it's not just numbers, right? It's beyond the output. And we've heard about specific testimonies of like Uncle Stanley, specific people. So maybe just to hear from the speakers here, how easy is it to actually find someone like that? Are there certain specific strategies that you would share with the audience? Maybe perhaps for seniors, then later we hear on youth.
Okay, I can go first. For seniors, it really is paying attention to the jobs to be done when they volunteer. Yeah, the deeper meaning of why they volunteer. Being able to identify that and then also align the role to that. It really sometimes surprises them. Yeah, they may say that, hey, oh, you actually know this, you actually know this, you are quite good at creating this role for me. So things, comments like that, yeah, in engaging senior volunteers, very important. Need to pay attention. One of our volunteers, she is very young retiree, a retired teacher. She was exploring different roles, wanting to keep herself engaged meaningfully. So we design or we tailor, we customize roles for her. She was quite appreciative that we actually took into consideration like her past, her job, and to allow her to use that skill in this new role. So yeah, with senior volunteers, I think it is the attention and the attention to detail.
Yeah, so
Thanks, Shikin.
yeah, so I think adding on also is for us to really know why they even started out to be with us, right? So they joined us as a member in the Active Aging Center, right? So of course, if that's the place that they want to be and is at, right, then that's where it all started. So that's where they will also want to give back and give others the same experience. And yeah, and then give them the same that whole cycle. I feel that it will just keep going and going, yeah, and really to be a blessing beyond being blessed, right? To be, yeah.
Sharing. Yeah, so indeed, it's not always just about numbers, it's also the impact, and when you're able to identify these quality volunteers, they can stay with you for as long as possible. Yeah, so perhaps let's hear even from your own, efforts to engage all of this. It's also probably quite intensive and it takes a lot of hard work. So actually, how do you all then self-care to keep the demands of these roles sustainable?
Why nobody want to go?
Just to have a twist here. Yes.
First.
I think our participants are also very keen, right? If they're going to pour in resources to engage people of all backgrounds and levels. Competent.
I guess I can go first.
Yeah, go ahead, Kelda.
Yeah. So I mean the reason why I stepped into this organization after leaving the IHL was really that I saw the dedication that the staff of CCSS were giving when I was a volunteer with them. And that really resonated with me, or I even asked myself that question, if I can be in that position to give in that similar capacity. I never knew that I would be the VM or CCSS. I thought I would just come in and, fili fala, but apparently not. Yeah, so answering the question on how I cope or how I do fun things, right? I run, right? I know I don't look like it, but I go for my runs. I put in an IV drip of coffee on days that I need. Yeah, and occasional bubble teas as well. And I think having the conversation or having someone to talk to, for example, let's say my boss, right? Then that helps me in managing the job. Yeah. So having that open communication and working with the team, keep talking to them. That helps in making the work a lot more palatable as well. Then of course, whatever you do after 6 p.m. is your own problem lah. Yeah, how you want to self-care and let your hair down, Yeah. So that's me. I have a IV drip somewhere lah. Yeah. Today not in use. Yeah. Today's a okay day. Yeah.
Okay, I can go. I self-care by volunteering, but volunteering with nature. So volunteer with nature. I do farming, or rather I try to volunteer to help doing farming. If not, then I will really go into nature to just take a walk. What I'm trying to say is away from humans to just recharge in that aspect.
Thanks, Shikin. Stefanie?
Yeah, I think for me is in fact always going back to the purpose now. So I think for VMs it's really easy, very easy to get burnout, right? And I think that's across especially for social sector, the double hatting and things like that. I think for my team, we are very lucky. We are really a dedicated group of volunteer managers. But also at the same time, because we deal with large volumes of volunteers as well as large scale events, it's really challenging for my team, right? So how we really get by every day is like having treats for ourselves, having sessions where we bond and really just chill out, just to detox a little bit for ourselves as a team. But for my own, I think I because being in the sports, right, so need to be very careful, very not say very careful, must be very mindful of wellness as well. So I go for class pass classes lah. Because time is always not on my side. Why I say class pass is that it gives me the flexibility of time to choose as and when. And sometimes, like, right now, if I want to go for an evening class, I can quickly go and book it as opposed to a structured class. So I think that is my way of self-care. But I think more importantly is that I also started this volunteer leaders engagement on a small group base. Because for me, I always find that because when you are already maybe higher up there, right, and then when you don't still understand more from the ground level, you don't engage the volunteers as much other than during deployments. Hearing their stories, for me is actually very very important. And it's very powerful because when you hear their stories, it inspires you. At the same time, it reminds you of what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. So that to me has been something that I kind of started to actually meet up my volunteer leaders more on a regular basis. I think that has just started the suite of it. But I think it is sitting some suites of volunteer leaders are also saying, hey, this is like the first time they're having this, and that they really appreciate, because for a leader to come down to their level, hearing them and talking to them and just having laughters, I think those are really just the real pills of everything of why we are doing what we are doing. Yeah. So that's how I self-care.
Definitely. Yeah, I hear you talking about stories of the volunteers, right? And yeah, that's something that really is precious. So on that note, for our participants who are, some of them are starting or hoping to start on this journey, it will be quite intensive, right, to engage in all these segmentation and engagement potentially. So what is one learning that you would share with them, perhaps in the area of actually communicating the impact of all these strategies, so that they can perhaps also share with their organizations as they embark on this journey? Communicating the impact.
Okay, maybe I'll go. I think for us, having to really lay out our impact is not as easy as maybe other social service agencies. But I think for us, it's really about the sport ecosystem. I think what we are trying to also establish and do is that every time before our session starts, when we have our briefing, we are looking to communicate this impact, right? Because sometimes smallest roles, that the volunteers are actually involved, they may not see the bigger picture, right? So I think that is also where, it is important for us as PMs to remind ourselves, hey, just to have a snapshot of this, right, for our volunteers to know that, hey, when you are actually volunteering in this particular event, what does it mean to Singapore? What does it mean internationally? And also for Sports Singapore as a whole, we are very thankful that they are putting Singapore at a pedestal in shining that volunteers actually has played a very critical role in every way. Yeah, so I think that is one. And when there's certain praises and comments that comes from organizers, and that's where we will also share with our volunteers how thankful we are in commenting our volunteers here.
Now let's also hear from the other speakers in terms of communicating the impact. Yeah, and if it differs between seniors and youth, yeah, feel free to share that as well from your experience.
Thanks. Yeah, I think for us, right, it kind of was the other way around now. My boss asked me to do, so I do law. Yeah. Okay, but in all seriousness, I think when we came in and we saw the gaps on the ground, as I mentioned, CCSS, we are the volunteer center. We saw the gaps in the different social service agencies that we were working with. We then brought these gaps back to the team, and how can then we use the staff skill sets, right, to then impact the community. Yeah, so I think one thing that we saw was the whole peer volunteerism, right? Because we are going to be an aging society. Let's leverage on that. Let's empower the old people. Yeah, then of course the other end of the spectrum were the young ones. When we received the school groups, right, this was also a scratch in the head, right? How can we impact them better? We don't want them to just come in and clear the VIA hours. Yeah. So when we then share this in a larger scheme of things that, yes, it's going to improve this, yes, it's going to help in the area, I think we saw the buy-in and we saw that everybody was aligned. I think it's very important to be aligned with your organization as well. Even though sometimes the volunteer management role is a satu orang, it's a one person, right? But it's very important to get your programs, your operational team to have that buy-in with you as well. So one thing or one little tip that I can give to you guys is there are so many things that we shared today, right? What is one thing that you want to embark on from here on, rather than I need to do everything? Because not everything is going to fit your organization, right? Not everything is going to work in your organization as well. So what is one thing that you want to implement? Sit on it, have a coffee, and then after that can think on how you want to grow in the area. Yeah.
Thanks, Kelda. So one thing for everyone to think about, yeah, to embark. Let's hear from Shikin as well. What is one key learning, perhaps in terms of communicating the impact, since you've already started on this journey?
Okay, I think for volunteers, for us is to over-communicate the impact of what they are doing. To remind them that, you doing this, what does it do for the organization? So to keep on over communicating with our volunteers, whether it is individual volunteers, youth volunteers, or corporate volunteers. At Dementia Singapore, all groups of volunteers, every time when we start a session, there'll be the mandatory training and briefing where we will share with them, you doing this, what is the impact? So for volunteers, internally for organization from the organization perspective, I think it will be beneficial to share to higher ups the impact of volunteers' contribution on the ground. On the ground, like operationally, how their contribution enhances operational as well as operational delivery on the ground. So kind of bridging the two and two, like the volunteers over communicating the impact of what they do, and then internally higher ups to make everyone aware or everyone informed of how the volunteer contribution is helping on the. And also just to echo Kelda, it may be daunting to want to, okay, I'm going to start segmenting my volunteers across different groups, youth, corporate, individuals, perhaps to prioritize what is the need at the moment for your organization. If currently maybe you feel that it's beneficial to engage just youth volunteers, it could help you in your service delivery, then focus on youth volunteers, focus your efforts on youth volunteers. So if you feel that maybe individual volunteers can help me in my service delivery, then focus your effort on individual volunteers, just to prioritize and to pace yourself.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, so indeed, it's really about linking back to the service delivery goals and how the volunteers can actually also support that as much as you are enriching their journey as well. Yes, so thank you everyone, yes, for your active participation in the Q&A, and also for our dear speakers for generously sharing your experiences. Coming up ahead, we have the Singapore Volunteer Management Conference for you to participate and learn. And this session will be held on the 28th of March. So do note that the in-person session has already been fully subscribed, but you can always participate online. So feel free to scan the QR code in order to join the session. It will take place on the 28th of March from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. So thank you once again for your enthusiastic participation today. We hope you have received from this session learning about the 4 areas of volunteer segmentation and their benefits, the whole segmentation and engagement journey, considerations for effective strategies, and of course, assessing and communicating their impact. So with that, thank you everyone. Have a restful evening and a fruitful rest of the week ahead. We look forward to seeing you at our next volunteer management event.